Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. It's Tim and Julie Harris, and this is Real Estate Coaching Radio. I want to start out by thanking all of you for helping us to climb to the next level in terms of podcast listeners, listens and downloads, and of course, on our YouTube channel. This is tracking to be one of our best years ever, which is pretty magnificent. And I think it's actually an early sign that the market is truly returning, because our podcast listens and our YouTube views, because we're such focused on such a tiny little niche market, is directly tied to real estate activity. Like during the winter, during the holidays, or when kids go back to school, the number of people that watch our stuff and listen to our stuff drops, a lot. And now that we're seeing an increase going into the spring, that's a little bit, I would say maybe 20% more than what we have seen for the last 2 springs in terms of downloads and views. It definitely, I think, is because there's a lot of agents that are getting back into the market and they're very motivated and excited. And that actually fits perfectly with what our topic is going to be. And what we're focusing on today is the smart agents talking points, be the experts everyone trusts. And that's what we try to focus you guys in on. So you will, when you listen to our show, and you certainly attend our coaching programs, you are educated, motivated, and you're ready to get into action. But here's what we know. In a market where everybody's a real estate social media influencer, where everyone seems to be dealing with the same cards, the thing that's ultimately going to make you better, make you different, make you more desirable is your depth and breadth of the knowledge of the market stats. You don't have to sit there and fire hose them with all the different analytical stuff and all the rest of it, but you at least have to have a high level of competence. Because what a lot of people in the real estate industry do is they try to fool people with, I would say, fake or contrived confidence. And with the I think almost overexertion of confidence, appearing overly confident on social media, they're hoping that translates into people believing that they're competent. But that's not the way people think. Matter of fact, it's the exact opposite. The more sophisticated a consumer is, the more they're weary of somebody that comes off too confident or too boisterous or demonstrative, show-offy, basically, whatever words you want to use. So if you really truly want to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, definitely lean into the facts, because people, when they know that you're not full of what, and they know you're not just trying to fool them with your overexertion of your confidence, and they realize you're actually competent, you're going to have a lot more, certainly the better quality clients that you're going to attract. The folks that are attracted to the whiz bang social media sort of approach to, marketing and lead generation, those types of potential customers are not necessarily the ones that are going to stick with you, because you're just essentially going to be beholden to whoever is the next big whiz bang social media influencer in your marketplace. But if you're the one that's proven yourself to be competent, and you're competent ultimately plays out from the transactions you've done, you're going to win in the end. Hopefully that all makes sense to you. I know it doesn't for everyone. I know every time Julie and I are presenting, I always think to myself, I wonder what percent of the thousands and thousands of people that are listening to us actually are understanding why we're saying what we're saying. And I know it's not everyone, but a lot of folks, Julie and I evolved to the messaging that we pass along to you guys. We just didn't come out of the real estate womb knowing what to say and how to say it. It's taken literally decades, and it's taken literally hundreds of thousands of coaching calls for us to be able to formulate our thoughts in the way that we do. And I think it's also true that it's going to take a certain level of experience, maybe some other things too, for our message to really resonate with folks. And, so at the end of the day, there's probably in the marketplace, there's maybe on any given day, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people that really are listening to what we have to say. But also, those are the 3,000 or 4,000 people that are also very transactional, or are going to be even more so, because they are acknowledging and seeing signs that we're definitely at the beginning stages of a new real estate boom. And I want to remind all of you, make sure you get our notes for this podcast and every podcast, and you can get them for free. Just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. harrisrealestatedaily.com is, of course, our daily newsletter. Costs you nothing. All you got to do is drop in your email address, then go over to your normal email, and then confirm that you want the subscription. And that's it. And then you'll get our newsletter every single day. That day's podcast, notes, and a lot of other information that's just for the subscribers of the newsletter. Julie?
Yes, that's right. And a special shout out to those of you who are motivated who are getting more and more competent every day. But we also know from many years of coaching and from living the life, walking in your shoes, is that some of you are still a bit too secret agenty and a little bit too scared to be put on the spot to actually have to talk about real estate. At the same time, we know that those of you who are very confident and competent to speak about real estate and to actually bring value to those conversations, even if they're just in passing with your center of influence, doesn't have to always be a listing appointment. But those of you who are very comfortable talking about real estate all the time tend to be a lot more transactional. It just makes sense. People are attracted to value. And one of the ways that you can take value to those conversations and talk about real estate more with confidence is to have some talking points at your fingertips. Know what you're going to talk about when somebody asks you, how's the market? And don't just rely on some headline that you saw in your email this morning, which may or may not be true, or something you heard on your car radio when you were driving to your, real estate office. So we're here to give you the facts. And that's why today's podcast is Smart Agent Talking Points. Be the expert that everybody trusts. Be somebody that is established as the go-to person. Oh, I know. I'm going to ask Tim, because last time I ran into him at the gym, he had all of these facts that I didn't know anything about. So I've got some real estate question. I'm going to go to Tim. He's my go-to person.
Well, but
remember
Julie,
those stats, right? Who do you transact with? The person that you already know. Go ahead.
we don't sell real estate where we live, and Julie has a license in Texas. We live in Puerto Rico. I don't have a license. I might get another license because of what happened last week. What happened last week in here in our community is that we had 3 people who know that we're real estate adjacent. They know we don't sell real estate, but they know that we're in the real estate business, and they're asking us rando questions about not just this market where we live, but markets where they might have investment properties and things like that. And that only comes from, obviously, from the fact that we've had previous conversations with them about real estate where they realized that we were, experts in what we were trying to help them answer or figure out, or at least give them the breadcrumbs to follow to solve their real estate conundrum. But at the end of the day, it got me thinking, because of these 3 that approached us, 2 of them had houses that they wanted to sell, and the list price, hypothetical list price of these particular houses was not a small number. So it really got my brain thinking, why don't we get real estate license again, Julie?
Ears are clicking.
Exactly. So we're actually
Maybe.
playing around with the idea. Well, why wouldn't we exactly get real estate license? Because this would be a fun place to sell real estate, and we'd only do it. I'll tell you how we do it, because Julie and I formulated our plan.
Oh boy,
It'll get
can
to
of
Julie's.
worms has been opened now.
Okay, well, so we thought, here's what we'll do. And I bet you we do this too. I bet you we do that this year, because I think we're both in love with the simplicity of this idea. So again, I'm not going to get into the weeds about what the average sale price here is, but it's not small. And so we would we'd only work with sellers. We'd only work with a maximum number of, we're debating, between 5 and 10 sellers at any one time. And we would not work with any buyers unless the buyers were buying our listings. If we had buyers that showed up in our lives that didn't have houses to sell, we would refer those buyers off to agents that are local agents, and those agents, in order to get our referrals, would have to be part of our EXP Realty group. And then we would give them referrals, and they would pay a referral fee, but that's how they would get the referrals. Because if we had listings here, we would get, I bet you for every 1 listing you have, even in this market, you probably have, I bet you, easily 20 buyer leads. And so we could refer those buyer leads off and never have to work with a buyer. Now, if it's a seller that wants to buy something, we would still refer that buyer lead off to somebody who is part of our EXP Realty group, because we don't want to work with buyers. So why don't we want to work with buyers? Because working with sellers is, you have normal working hours. You start at one time, you end at one time. There's, it's more of a business versus working with buyers where there's a lot of, people changing their minds and all the things you guys deal with every day. But that's the plan we came up with. It's the one that, guess what, we've been telling you guys to do for years. And I'll tell you even more. How would we lead generate? We would center of influence and past client it, obviously. And then we would go after expireds. Probably those 2 sources, but maybe some for rent by owners as well, because there's some for rent by owners in here that I think are involuntary landlords. In other words, people that got stuck with, they just decided to rent their properties, because rentals here, at entry price on a rental here is like 20, 25 grand a month. So I imagine some of those people, if they knew what their properties were worth, would sell them. But that's it. And yeah, that's as a result of, Julie and I realizing, just being ourselves, walking around this community, occasionally talking about real estate with people, that we have now built ourselves a nice little reputation that we might want to, take full advantage of. So
And that was without really trying to. So
yeah,
I'm sure this will come out more on the Friday Fun
well,
show.
but the truth is, Julie, is that, you know, when you and I were thinking about this, how stupid simple it is and how easily we could do it, get a real estate license in Puerto Rico, big deal. But then I got to thinking about like how many other people, coaches and trainers that have our background, A, ever sold real estate in the first place, or B, would even have I don't even know what the word would be, gumption, guts to get real estate licenses again. Because if they
Yeah.
got real estate licenses again and they said they're going to sell real estate and they're going to take listings and they failed at it, then everyone would see that they're not very good at selling real estate. So why should they be
That'd
listening
be
to
into
this?
that.
That would
Yeah.
be the end of their coaching business too. And there's a lot of coaches out there that have never sold real estate before.
It's
And so
true.
I think maybe Julie, the reason that we should do it, aside from the opportunity, is that we should do it just to essentially really make the point that we are, the real deal in any market, in any market condition. It would be
I
fun. It would be a good
It
challenge.
probably would be fun. Yes. Okay.
So you can see where the problem is. I haven't talked her into it yet. Anyway.
Another bunch of licensing. Yes. Okay. Which brings us to one of the things that we certainly would do, as we coach you to do, is have some talking points when those conversations come up. No longer be a secret agent. So, listeners, I know that there's varying degrees of this. Some of you just got your license yesterday and you're not really sure what you should be talking about. That's part of what we help you with, certainly on the podcast, but of course in coaching with Premier Coaching. But for the rest of you, sometimes, you just really haven't brushed up for a while. So about every 2 weeks or so, we do this talking points, what's actually happening in the marketplace so that you don't get snookered by random headlines and people talking, even economists. We talked a couple of weeks ago, there were some that were like, oh, the market's going to crash. It's all going to be terrible from their economist standpoint, where they're just looking at real estate as an asset class and not all of the other things that affect the real estate market. So that's what we bring you. And we certainly would do that ourselves. So let's jump into the first point. Tim told you how to get the newsletter. All right. So number one, and this is really exciting. This is why I put it number one, existing home sales forecasts. You remember we've had 2.5 to 3 years of what has been called a real estate recession, not because prices have come down, but because the number of sales has been suppressed for many different reasons. But now, existing home sales forecast, NAR, the National Association of Realtors, projects now approximately 4.26 million existing home sales in 2025. Now, in comparison, we've clocked in at barely 4 million last year. So 4.26 is really good. That reflects about a 6% growth in sales. We've started to go the right direction. That's great because month after month we had gone the wrong direction.
And by the
Price
way,
appreciation is also expected to moderate 3 to 4% annually, but we'll talk about that on a future point. Go ahead.
Julie, it's not really a recession. A recession is 2 quarters of negative growth. I mean, it's just not
Well,
really
they argue
relevant.
that it's a sales recession.
Well, it is, but really what it is the real estate depression. This has been a depression. When you have a multi-year slowdown where the market basically, where frankly, the market stays flat, or last year it actually had decreased sales. That's not a recession, that's a depression. But what this really is just the bottom of the market, and all your other points reinforce that.
That's
So
right.
Julie and I are steadfast in our belief that we're at the beginning stages of a 25-year real estate boom. It'll be a super cycle in real estate like we've never experienced before. Maybe has never even, maybe something in the total history of housing. Nothing like this has ever happened before. Driven by all the things we've talked about extensively on past podcasts. But really, the bottom line is if you have a real estate license in most of the country, you're going to be experiencing opportunities to help more people make more money than is even then available. You'll have more of an opportunity to help more people make more money than you would have maybe even in the past 20 years combined. It's extraordinary what's going to be happening. So open your mind to it. And then obviously you will find yourself, frankly, especially if you're not waiting around to see if we're right or not, just assuming we are, that we are at the beginning stages of a real estate a long-term super cycle, your mindset about what you're going to be learning is going to completely change. You're not going to be, it's to Julie's point, really, when you're seeing what the future is going to hold, if you're very optimistic about what your future is going to be, you're all of a sudden taking a different set of actions than you otherwise would have. Like, how many of you are waiting around to see what the year is going to be? Waiting around to see if you're going to have a better year than last year? If you're doing that, if you even emotionally feel that way, which a lot of you do, you're going to lose the year. Because if you wait around for another day in this market because it's changing really fast, wait till you hear Julie's next 2 points, then you're going to miss the market. That's the reason you do not wait around to join Premier Coaching. Join Premier Coaching now. Go to premiercoaching.com, or if you'd like, if you're on your phone, just text the word Premier to 47372. Text the word Premier to 47372, or just go to premiercoaching.com. All the information about Premier Coaching is on premiercoaching.com, including the information about our new ethical local real estate professional real estate designation. Those are definitely going to be the tools that you're going to want to have to take full advantage of this new market. And you can join Premier Coaching for free, and that does include full access to the first level of Premier Coaching and to our daily semi-private coaching call. So there's no excuse for you not to do this if you're even mildly serious about your success this year, especially for the next generation of 25 years. Really, I don't know how long you're going to be in real estate, but if it's even 5 years or 10 years, you're in the right place. So take the necessary steps to get your mindset right so you can obviously set yourself up financially. PremierCoaching.com is your solution. Next point, Julie Harris.
Yes. Now remember the first point, NAR said 4.26 million is their current projections. But point number 2 is even better. MBS Highways Outlook, which also runs list reports, they've got great data. They forecast a 10% rise in existing home sales for this year. With a 30-year mortgage rates, they're saying dropping into the low 6% range. They're kind of tying those two things together. If we see the lower sixes, that we could get a 10% increase in sales, which is fantastic. And then point number 3, everybody's wondering about home price trends. We talk about affordability all the time. So what are the facts behind that? The S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller U.S. National Home Price Index, too long to have an acronym, I guess, reported a 0.6 month over month, but a 4.1% year over year gain in home prices. That's 2024 to 2025, with the highest performer being New York, actually, which is up 7.7% just so far year over year. The lowest performer, Tampa's actually under by about 1.5 of price decline. Still not tragic because they had run up with the rest of the country, but is starting to moderate down in Tampa, for example. Now, the FHFA reported a 0.2% monthly and a 4.8% annual increase. They show the strongest growth as the Midwest and the Northeast, which of course would include New York, up 7%, with a slight decline around 1% year over year in the Mountain and South Atlantic region. So adjust accordingly, know your own stats, read those reports that your MLS has put out to you, that your board of realtors stuffs into your email, and it usually goes to your junk. You don't even know it's there. They have really nice charts and graphs and things that you can use on your social media that you could use for your videos that gives you your personal local knowledge. And remember too that Altos Research, and I think CoreLogic does this too, but you can type in like your, let's say you work in about 5 zip codes primarily. You can have them track that and give you monthly or weekly reports that are super personal, excuse me, super personalized to your market. And that's important because not every even, excuse me, zip code acts the same, right? So when we were selling real estate, we would have 43214 was doing really well. You could sell a house nearly overnight if it was priced right on the right streets. And then we had more of a luxury market we were working in simultaneously for a while as we bridged into New Albany Country Club. And yes, the sale prices were higher, but they also took longer to sell. So it would be important to not think of our entire, sales career in those zip codes as acting the same, because the expectations you set for your sellers are different if your days on the market are 90 than if they're 9 seconds. Does that make sense?
It does. Give yourself a little break. I know you want to have some of your tea, but I'll say this too. I've had several conversations with folks over Instagram. By the way, if you guys want to message us for show ideas, questions, or comments, just go to Instagram and just drop us a direct message. And our Instagram is Tim and Julie Harris, and follow us while you're over there. But the conversations are all about the same thing. People are not sure they think they're going to be relegated to the trash heap of service providers because of AI. And, you and I've said all the normal things that people say. It'll be agents that are using AI that will replace agents that don't use AI, all those types of things. But really, it doesn't really help ease the nerves, calm the nerves, especially as people are reading all these. We're probably going to all have robots in our homes within the next couple of years. We're probably all going to be driving, we're not even driving, riding in autonomous cars with, all these things are happening and changing so fast. It's very easy to believe that somehow your services are going to be essentially, like I said, relegated to the trash heap of history. And I'm here to tell you that you're probably right. A lot of you won't have a place in the marketplace if you haven't really differentiated yourself. Now, how are you going to differentiate yourself? Again, where there's going to be AI that's going to create, everyone's going to have these killer brands. Everyone's going to have marketing and advertising. Everyone's going to have social media. Everyone's going to have all this stuff. I know you guys see this stuff. I see it as well. I showed Julie a avatar that was on that was selling AI that was on Instagram, and I watched it twice because I couldn't believe. I honestly think it may have been a real human trying to act like they're AI. But then
It
I clicked over to the website to see their other samples, and I could not freaking tell that it
was
wasn't a
really
real
good.
human. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. But that's not just one company that's doing it. There's thousands of them doing it. So if here's for example, if you took the suggestion Julie just gave you, and the suggestion obviously was to present factual market data. And you're going then to load that into AI, and you're going to have the AI make for you a bunch of, an avatar. Maybe the avatar is of you, or maybe you just basically have an avatar assistant that delivers the information for you. And then you start belching out that information to your, all the things. You guys understand conceptually what I'm talking about. That's not going to work for long because everyone's going to be doing that. Every single agent, as soon as they get their real estate license, as soon as they join with Julie and I over at eXp Realty, the next thing that they're going to do is they're going to be plugging into some website, and then they're going to be setting up all their social media. And the next thing you know, they're going to have the same social media presence with the same level of content as someone that's been doing it for the last 20 years. So the idea that you can use branding and marketing and all this social media stuff to differentiate yourself, it just isn't true. And I think all of you guys can see that. So really, where do you go with this? Why is it that I said that a lot of agents will be relegated? And the answer is just because they've not developed the ability to have meaningful conversations offline. They don't know actually how to strike up conversations at the gym. They're secret agents, to Julie's point. Knowledge equals confidence. Ignorance equals fear. But also, what equals fear is not knowing what to say or how to say it, which I guess is ignorance to how to have conversations. But the agents that are going to be the ones that are going to truly dominate the market aren't just the ones that are technology based and using AI. They're the ones that don't need the technology and the AI to be successful because they know how to have meaningful conversations with people that instantly in those folks' minds sets them apart. Everyone's focused on the gimmicks and the easy buttons, and the gimmicks and the easy buttons will get you attention, but they don't get you closed transactions. Hopefully you guys are realizing that if you're brand new in real estate, and probably about 40% of you are, why don't you save yourself the learning curve and just assume what I told you is true and go right to the learning curve of learning to say what is true. So your agents or your marketplace will start seeing you as competent, and then they'll start wanting to do business with you, even if you're brand new in my example. Julie?
Yeah, that's true. In fact, if you are brand new and you take this seriously, you can oftentimes sound way more experienced because you're backing it with facts and some scripting, some good scripting, than somebody who has been in the business for a long time but's gotten a little bit complacent and just, assumes that the business is going to come to them because they've been around forever and blah, blah, blah. And they play bridge now and then. And some of that's true. They'll still do a few deals that way, but they won't be as competitive with the same opportunity. We know that because we used to do that. We used to take listings based on fear, anxiety, and enthusiasm with some good scripts behind us, where they would say, well, you really believed in the house. You were so much more excited than the other agent who was probably 20 years more experienced at the time.
Well,
It
but
can be done.
as far as the facts go, so if you're a brand new agent, just so we can stay on that line of
Yeah.
thinking, and you know facts and you're using Julie's notes from today's podcast, and you sort of, you could even create a little cheat sheet for yourself that maybe save it on your phone. And when you run into different people, you can have different facts about the community, about the neighborhood. Someone asked you a question, you have it at the fingertips. They're not going to ask you how long you've been in the business. They're
No.
not going to ask you about anything other than what you have to offer, or what you're essentially, the information that you have. They're going to be everybody is real estate curious. Everybody in every price range in every market is a
Yep.
real estate hobbyist. You can thank all the HGTVs and the Zillows and all the rest of it, but there is nobody on planet Earth that isn't real estate curious, especially in the United States. So if
Hmm.
you become the source for the real estate information about the new listing, about what just sold, what didn't sell, all that stuff, you are going to have so much confidence that you're going to trip over conversations and thus create more leads than you can possibly imagine. But what is it going to take? It's going to take you accepting the fact that what we're saying is true. It's going to come. So what's the superpower in the future? It's not marketing, advertising, and branding. It's your ability to have meaningful conversations with folks. And
Hmm.
believe it or not, and if you're like 45 years or older, what I'm saying now seems so logical, like duh, Tim. I mean, but anybody that's younger than that, especially if you're in your 30s, you haven't grown up that way. And you're saying, well, people in my generation, they're going to rely heavily on digital. Well, that might be true, but if you're going to want to actually do business with more than, first time buyers, you're going to want to know how to actually have intentional conversations. And that is really what coaching is. Coaching and training is for the folks that are ready to take, they're done being hobbyists. They're done experimenting. They're done trying to see if something will work. They're done looking for the shiny object. They're done going to the Facebook groups and asking, what should I be doing now? I just had a closing. They're the ones that are actually serious about being of service to other people and making this their careers. You decide which path you're on.
Exactly. Exactly. It's up to you. If it's meant to be, it's up to me, right? Okay. So point number 4, rental market dynamics. Now I put this in here not because all of you deal with leases. Some of you do them every now and then as necessary. We always recommend that you say, yes, it would be my pleasure to help you with that. You can have a property for lease and for sale at the same time, or maybe you just keep it as a lease unit until they're ready to sell. There's lots of good reasons to know how to be on both sides of a lease. But it also does play into your resale market. Tim, you were mentioning here where we are, there's a scarcity of rentals that are available and they're very expensive. So when you factor in how much somebody is going to spend on a very expensive rental, it doesn't take long before that equates pretty close to a down payment, and you can very easily rationalize into buying something. Now, that's not true in every market. Maybe in your market, it's a lot less expensive to lease, but you should know what that comparison is. So I'm going to give you national stats and then adjust accordingly for your local market.
Let me make this practical, okay, Julie?
Sure.
So before you get into the facts, actually, why don't you save the facts for the newsletter? They can read them off the newsletter, right? Unless
That's
it's
fine.
something. But
Yep.
really, guys, for rent by owners and all markets are oftentimes one of the best sources of listing leads, because a lot of the for rent by owners are involuntary landlords. And this is especially true when you go up market. So if you see a property for rent, that's on 100% listing lead. That's how you have to think of it, because that seller is not getting a lot of, they're probably not getting solicited by any other agents, first of all.
No.
Second of all, they're getting calls directly from buyers who want to rent, obviously. And those buyers are, that's not a very easy conversation for most non-real estate people. So if look for owners that aren't trying to build rental businesses that maybe have one or two rental properties that, they involuntarily
Reluctant
got stuck
landlord
with.
types.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then also you can talk with, and this is kind of, counterintuitive, but you can also talk to property management companies. There's a lot of, again, brokers who never were very good at working with buyers or sellers, but good at taking rental leases, that they'll refer their listing leads out for a referral fee, and we've had a lot of coaching clients do this. They'll actually partner with that rental company and sometimes buy them out or things like that. Because then if you can make money off of a rental business if you have about 100 properties under management. So if you can buy into an existing rental business that has 100 properties under management, you'll have maybe 10 or 15 of those properties per year. They'll want to put them for sale so you can get the listing commissions on those. And then you'll have a lot of buyer leads that you can refer off or work yourself. But it's, you can then get more rental listing and replenish your inventory. But I've had several coaching clients that have bought large rental businesses with the sole purpose of basically just converting all of them as the leases came up to for sales, because all of them had a lot of equity, and the owners didn't know. And they had probably 4 or 5 years of making over $1 million in net income just from that one purchase of that management business.
Yeah, there's a lot of, we probably should do a whole podcast dedicated to getting agents to stop saying, no, I don't handle rentals, because that's pretty common,
but if
right?
you don't want to handle rentals, and I understand that, but if you don't want to screw around handing rentals, understand it, depending on your price range, you could be giving up a lot of interesting opportunities for, like, say, for example, someone saying, I want to rent that property for $10,000 a month. Well, obviously, if they want to rent it, that's great. But if they can afford $10,000 a month, probably they can afford to buy. Well, you might find out that they just sold their house and they're not yet found something that they want to buy or they want to build. You guys get it? So there's a lot of ancillary business you can make from the rental business. But again, I would say that there is definitely, I would say, probably 10% of my most successful coaching clients have had side gigs as owning management companies. And they've made a lot of money from them. And when sales slow down, they still have that steady income. So if you have, for example, 100 rental properties, I'll just keep the math easy for me. And let's say that the average rent is $2,000 a month. So you're making $200,000 a month. Most times you're going to get a percent of the monthly revenue that's brought in off those leases. And it's negotiable, but let's just say 6%. So you'll get $12,000 a month off managing those properties. And then you also get a lease up. So if the property rents for $24,000 for a year, you'll get 6% of that. So you get paid multiple ways. But again, it's something you can mostly delegate. and doesn't require a lot of skill. So there you go.
Also, importantly, their phone numbers, their advertising for all of you who
Yep.
like to say, I don't, cold call or proactively lead generate because I can't find phone numbers. There's a great source where not a lot of agents even know about it to prospect. And secondly, the phone numbers are easy to get. And I like it too. We have a for rent by owner script, of course, as part of Premier Coaching. It's largely just a business conversation.
Yep.
You rarely get into the weeds with all the emotional things that sometimes you have on normal residential sales. It's just like typically they'll say, well, I don't know. What kind of price could you get me for it if I wanted to sell it? Then you talk about a CMA and one thing leads to the next and then make a business decision.
Well, you found properties for us when we moved to Puerto Rico by calling VRBOs, where
Yes.
the owners were the actual ones that were. And then Julie learned something very clever. You could get into VRBO.com, and actually somebody at VRBO showed her this. And
Mm-hmm.
you can then find out how frequently that VRBO has been rented for. So if you see a VRBO would make for a good listing, and then you get into VRBO and you see how frequently it's rented out, you already know whether that VRBO is a good
Yeah.
investment for that seller or that owner. And so when you call them up, you have a huge advantage, and you use our simple script. It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
And they're never going to say no, especially if you know what the rental history is going to be. They're going to say, yeah, if the numbers made sense.
Also, they answer the phone because they're trying to rent it.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
don't hit voicemail a lot. There is a button that says contact owner with their phone number on it. I mean, it can get that much easier. Okay. So point number 5, pending home sales index. NAR's pending home sales index rose 2% month over month to it's a rating system, 72%. I'm sorry, 72.0. That just means that it's getting better. Pending home sales index. The South has gone up by 6% of that. They are leading the way. So again, good news, pending home sales index. And we have lots of different ways that that's being tracked, but I didn't see any that were really down. And you can get the skinny on that from the newsletter as well. Point number 6, regional home price insights. The Midwest and Northeast are still the most supply constrained, leading to higher prices. So you're likely to see a higher rate of appreciation or inflation in those areas while they remain constrained. Maybe the new construction is going to fix that, but in the short term, it's the Midwest and Northeast suffering the most. The Western markets like Phoenix, LA, and Las Vegas are showing signs of recovery. They were previously, a little bit suppressed as well. They also are showing monthly gains. So that's really good. And there's all kinds of charts and graphs on that, but you don't need to know anything except it's positive. And then speaking of new construction, point number 7, new construction trends. Now, this is a really, really good sign. As of February, U.S. housing starts rose 11% month over month to 1.5 million units, seasonally adjusted. Again, they attribute what is the trend, and then they spin it out 12 months. So they think there's going to be, with single families, 11.4% increase to 1.1 million units. That's fantastic. Now, the strongest growth on that is in the West with a 20% increase in new construction. The biggest drop was in the Midwest with a 21% decline. Now, you'd have to jump into the weeds to find out why that is, but those are the numbers. The median sales price for new construction is now $414, so that's not that different than a resale. The average is $487. So again, know what's going on in your own market. We did, and I think we're doing one again. Yeah, we're doing something on new construction again this week. That's in the schedule because that's so important, especially if you are constrained on inventory, which most of the country is. It's just a matter of how bad. That's the regional change. What would you like to add or disagree with on that?
I mean, honestly, if I was in a market, if you and I were selling in a real estate market where there was a lot of new construction, I was so tempted just to make that my thing. The
We're
market,
going to talk about that on.
but the opportunity for new construction, if you happen to be living in most of the countries like this, like when Julie and I lived in Georgetown, Texas, just a little bit north of Austin, there was 3 or 4 of these big, huge, maybe even more, subdivisions that were getting built. Maybe the low end was like 450, and then they would go over 1 million. We didn't, we weren't selling real estate there, but we were investors and we were looking for things to buy. And so we'd go in there and there'd usually be 5. You guys have seen this before. If you haven't, welcome to real estate, 101. But there'd be, 4 or 5 different models that were set up there. And then 4 or 5 different new build reps that would be working in there. Sometimes they had assistants. Each of those new build reps, we weren't selling real estate, but we'd sold real estate prior in a market that wasn't quite as, I think, opportunistic for new construction as where we were in Texas. But we did go into those models, and we had our buyer agents go into those models, and they would meet the new build reps, and they would befriend them, and then they would bring them, buyer leads, obviously. And we made it a rule that if the buyer agent was working with a buyer that might even be remotely interested in the new construction, that the buyer agent was to go in there and obviously represent or introduce that
Register.
buyer. And it was very interesting how frequently the buyer who only wanted to live in this one infill community, that there was no new construction or whatever. In our case, it was like they only wanted to live in Clintonville or Worthington or whatever. But I don't even want to consider these areas that are 15 or 20 minutes away. But you take them and they'd see new construction and they'd fall in love with it and they would buy it. That would happen probably 50% of the time. But if you are a low skilled agent and you heard your buyer say, I don't want to see any new construction, you're not ever going to realize that that's what they really want. They just haven't seen what they've liked yet.
Yeah, and ask them that after you've shown them 4 or 5 properties built in 1945 that are all going to have inspection nightmares and don't even qualify for FHA. See how they feel about new construction after that.
Yeah, a lot of people, because of prices and because of interest rates, they're not going to really be able to easily afford those old homes because they are constantly going to need maintenance and upkeep and these types of thoughts. But each of those new build reps represents one of what could be your best lead source ever, because they are having, tons of people walk in and out of their lives every single day. And these are all buyers. And for the most part, if you're working with a new build rep where the buyers, the homes that they're selling are not going to be in the first time buyer price range or in the move up price range, those are all sellers, right? Because all those buyers are going to have houses to sell. And those new build reps, guys, they don't work outside of that house. They're not, usually don't even have real estate licenses. So they're representing only the builder that they work with, only selling the inventory that they have. And so all of those listing leads go where? They go to their agent friends. And so befriend them, and then you'll be their agent friends. And I'll give you guys, this is the next level up. So let's say you have 10 buyers you're going to meet in the next 30 days. You're doing open houses. You're following what we teach you in Premier Coaching. You're going to realize that buyer leads fall off trees. They're everywhere. So you're not buying buyer leads. You're just able to easily generate buyers. You take 2 listings, you follow our system, the whole thing. So now what do you do with those buyer leads? Every single buyer lead that shows up in your life, you need to register them with the builder. What am I talking about? So again, we're going to use the scenario that there's 6 new construction builders, bigger ones, D.R. Horton, all that, even the medium-sized ones. Befriend the new build rep. Ask what the registration process is to register that buyer with that builder. Usually it's a form. That's all it is. You name, rank, serial number. All right, perfect. So talk to the build rep and say, build rep, I know your policy is that I have to be with the buyer in the first meeting in order for me to be included on the contract, in other words, be paid. But after you get to know that new build rep, here's what you'll discover. They're not going to hold you to it. So what you can then do is when you get a buyer, you don't have to go over and show them every one of those 6 models with that new build rep, because I got news for you. The build rep doesn't want you anyway, because you're just slowing the process down. But what you make an arrangement with the new build rep that you're going to send them over, but you're going to let them know ahead of time and send them a text, send them an email. Maybe you just create an online jot form and you send it over to them, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But you are technically, per their agreement, registering that buyer with that particular build rep. And then you can start, all of a sudden you'll have commission checks to show up. You'll be working with this buyer. We had this happen. Anyone who's been in business for a long time has had this happen. You'll work with the buyer. You'll have this buyer conversation. You'll introduce them to a build rep. The buyer will decide, and maybe you don't even go there. Like I said, you don't even go there. You just say, go call Betty. Betty's great. She's over at D.R. Horton. She's going to da-da-da-da-da. That's the extent of the conversation. You only talk with this buyer once. This buyer's a nice buyer. You click with the buyer, you send them off to D.R. Horton. And then, that's the end of it. You get the buyer registered with D.R. Horton, and 6 months later, 7 months later, a commission check shows up at your office, and you're going to go, what the hell is this for?
It is a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. And then you're going to remember, oh yeah. I mean, that's what happens. So
it is what happens. We're going to talk about this extensively on Wednesdays and Thursdays podcast today, because we're doing the new construction points. What you've gone down is just one little rabbit hole of how to really utilize new construction. I really think it's almost malpractice to not know, to have a real estate license and be earning your living and be trying to represent buyers and sellers and not know what's going on with new construction in your area. Even if you only do 2 or 3 sides of new construction per year, that's 2 or 3 sides more than you would have done if you didn't know about it. And that can be a gateway into a lot more business. Those of you who are in Premier Coaching, you know this from Coach Rochelle because she's got loads of builder relationships. And you know how she did it? She popped in, she learned the models, she showed enthusiasm, she brought her buyers there, and she routinely brings them cookies. None of this costs very much. Okay. And
She
she
makes
loves
the
to
cookies
bake.
herself. She's not buying them. She's making them herself.
That's right. Yeah.
That's true.
I think she's doing charcuterie for them now. But anyway, she's building those relationships because she recognizes that it's not just a one-off transaction. She's getting to know them. And now when those new build reps, maybe they have somebody back out and they've got a new spec home that comes in, they've got to sell it right away because guess what? They get bonuses when they sell a certain number of houses every month. And maybe it's the 30th of the month and they thought they were going to have that closing. Now they know to call Coach Rochelle because she's probably got a buyer in her pipeline that she's going to show new construction this weekend. And that spec home might not even be in the MLS. You see how, I used to work for somebody that said one hand washes the other. This is how one hand washes the other. You build a relationship. It's not just that one transaction. That's how it starts. So we'll get into the weeds a bit more on later podcasts this week about new construction, because as you can see from the stats, it's a really critical part of the market. They're building at least based on just now, and the builders are starting to roar back to life just on these early projections early this year, at least 1.5 million new construction residential homes. And I'm not sure that's even counting things like doubles and quads and stuff like that. So
I think it is.
lots of opportunity there.
I think it is, including commercial or multifamily stuff too.
Right.
But yeah, if you guys are not seeing and feeling opportunity, if you're not feeling opportunistic, if you're not feeling, optimistic, you're listening or paying attention to the wrong thing. You just are. And I get it. Some markets are slower to sort of start having the pulse of the spring market than others, but you are completely positioned. You're positioned perfectly. And it just goes back to these conversations I've had so many times with so many different people, that they think that their fortunes in the literal sense are tied to politics or tied to interest rates or tied to all these external things, and they're not. You can be massively successful no matter what direction the market's going, because you're selling something that people always need, whether the interest rates are going up or down, whether the economy is going up or down, whether whoever's the president, whoever, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't matter. You were smart enough. I don't know if you ever thought about it like this, to choose to sell something that everyone always needs no matter what. Isn't that amazing? There's so few things that are like that. Can you guys think of something else that's like that? Think of something. Toilet paper, I suppose. Food,
Air.
water, air, energy. Okay.
Water.
Yeah.
Utilities. There's a good category.
But think of something else. Think of something that you could actually sell that people will need no matter what and will buy or sell no matter what. Think of something. Isn't it incredible? Everything is voluntary. Everything you can say, well, you know what? I'll skip this upgrade cycle on the phone. A lot of people do. You're going to say, well, you know what? The tariffs are making the car so expensive that, my BMW or whatever it is about to come off the lease. I'm just going to see what the residual value is. And maybe I'll just do another lease on it, or maybe I'll just buy it because now to replace it's going to cost that much more. You guys get it? But when it comes to, I have to sell my house because I'm getting relocated from this town to this town, or I have new construction, I have to sell my house. Again, listings are always where it's going to be at in real estate, but there's so few things in life where it's in, like, I'd say health needs would be up there, right?
Sure.
That would be something. Toothbrushes, that's not something you're going to want to go without, because otherwise your breath will smell, I guess. I mean, there's some things like that, but very few things.
Yeah. I mean, it is a blessing. And the other thing is, unlike some of those other things, like, everybody needs food, but if you own a grocery store, you have to pay for that inventory. You have to pay for people to work the register. You have to pay the rent on the building. You don't have to buy any of your inventory.
Julie's making a big point. Let me drill down on what she just says, because it's interesting. If you wanted to start any kind of business, you would have to obviously, cover all the costs of the actual business, the lease, the building, the energy, the employees, and you'd have to also buy the inventory. In real estate, you could be at eXp Realty, have no office expense. You can join Julie and I at eXp Realty. And if you're looking for a broker upgrade, let's have that conversation. The link is down below in the show description, or you can just text me directly at 512-758-0206. My phone number, and only text, I never answer the phone, is 512-758-0206. Let's talk about it. But let's say you choose to move to eXp Realty. And let's say you are going to be a listing agent, and let's say you're going to take, you're setting your business plan around having 7 listings at all times. And let's say you're in an average market where the average commission is $10,000 each. And let's say you're in a market where it takes, 120 days, 90 days to sell a property. And so realistically, you're choosing not to work with buyers, but let's say realistically, you're going to have maybe 2 of those houses go into contract per month. You're going to make $240,000 a year off just what I just said. 7 listings at all times, $10,000 per commission, no buyer sides. And you are not going to be blowing a lot of money in marketing and advertising and wasting a lot of money on speculative stuff. You're going to build your business through real work, like we teach you to do in Premier Coaching. You're going to make $240,000 before taxes. Your margins, in terms of you make 10,000, you're keeping like 9,500 of it because you have virtually no expenses. You guys get it? There's no other business like that I can think of. None. There's no other business where you can have somebody else's home for sale that costs hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and not have to pay anything, and you still make a margin off that product. It's amazing, isn't it? So even if you are, it's like being a consignment, you're selling things on consignment in essence, but if you were selling things even on consignment, you'd still have to have a place to keep those things. Consignment jewelry or consignment art sales or consignment car sales or whatever it is. But you're not, you're selling real estate. So go you. You made the really smart decision. Now you've got to take it seriously, and you've got to realize that we are absolutely at the beginning stages of what will be the greatest generation for real estate sales, at least in the history of our country. Not because of Trump, not because of this, not because of the other things, but because of demographics.
Yep. That's
Because
right.
of
And
just
pent up
sheer
demand, which is demographics. Yes.
Exactly.
That's right. I mean, really, I'm looking for 2 things to intersect this year, and I think it's going to happen. And that is inventory is going to go like this, and rates, however I could do this, rates are going to go down, inventory is going to go up. And right in that intersection is when things are really going to fuel
It's
up.
happening now.
It's happening now. It's starting to happen now. But as that becomes more of an intersection, I think that's going to be huge. Imagine what the sales volume would be if we had more inventory right now today.
I'm going to talk about tariffs just for a millisecond. I promise I won't talk about it like I did last Friday.
We'll see.
Well, it's because it's such a load of crap. All these people that are trying to make it like it's this doomy and gloomy thing. I think freaking the tariff plan is brilliant personally. But only guess what percent of cars for sale, new cars, new imported cars, because they're the ones that are going to be charged the 25% tariff. Guess what percent of guess what percent of cars sold in the United States are subject to a tariff? I kind of said it wrong a second ago, but now I'm saying it right. So guess what percent of new cars for sale now will be subject to a tariff? If you believe the news, it's all of them, right? It's 43%. That means you have roughly 10 cars that are for sale. If you don't want to pay the tariff, you can
choose the other 6.
Choose the other 6. And what manufacturers have done, and this is what all of them are doing, is they're mostly absorbing the tariff themselves. So BMW announced that they're raising prices by 1%, and they're going to eat the other, 24% or whatever it is off what would have been their margins. Ferrari of all companies, they're doing the same thing. Ferrari is not raising prices to absorb the tariff. They're going to pay it themselves. That's how companies react. That's the power of tariffs. And that money is still going to be going to the U.S. Treasury to pay down debt. And we'll still get to the point where, I think probably the next 2 years, people earning less than $150,000 per year are going to have no income taxes. So it's going to take maybe a year or 2 for all this to really sort out and cycle out, but it's going to be extraordinary. Why am I telling you all this? Because don't look, if you're finding yourself gravitating to things that will make you feel like your tomorrow is going to be worse than your today, you're not going to take the actions necessary today to make it so your tomorrow is 1,000 times better than your today. And you got to really be careful of that, because it's so easy to get brainwashed and get suckered into the group think. It's really, it's so easy, because you'll talk to people, all your friends and family are thinking and feeling a certain way because they watch the same sort of, dribble that, and everyone's believing, oh my gosh, here we are at the end of the world. And then you take the time and you do your own research and you find out the truth, and you're like, wow, we are all just being elegantly lied to. And how long have we been elegantly lied to about how the economy in the world really works? A long time. So
that's why we have to go facting every now and then.
Exactly. And that's what, that's kind of one of the reasons we are motivated to do a lot of the podcasts we've done so far this year, because so much, we basically have gotten to the point where we feel morally obligated to making sure that we are spending a lot of time, oftentimes too much time, researching everything we're going to say to you guys before we say it, because we have to make it so that you guys are empowered, because we know knowledge equals confidence, and ignorance equals fear. And if you feel confident based on what you learned on today's podcast, you're going to have more intentional conversations. You're going to position yourself in the eyes of your your real estate consumers, which is everyone, by the way, as the go-to person. And that's going to be what's going to differentiate you, not your, war chest of TikTok videos.
That's right. So no excuses to be a secret agent going forward. We've given you lots of things to talk about, and we'll continue to do that this week. So our job, as always, is to educate you, motivate you, and now your job is to get into action. If you have questions, you can shoot them to us. If you're already a premier coaching client, go you. Take your questions to your daily semi-private coaching sessions with our awesome Harris certified coaches. They're there to help you every day. If somebody says something and you don't know what the answer to it is, or you took a new listing and you're not quite sure how to market it, or whatever the case may be, just take it to your coaching session and we'll be there to help you.
You guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.